Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dive into the 2026 Senate races, where the Republicans currently hold the advantage in the Senate, 53 to 47. So we're going to start with safe states, and these are states where the party who holds them right now has a 100% chance of winning the 2026. There's no chance they're going to be flipped by the opposition. So we're going to start with the Republican safe states. That gives us Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. So that puts Republicans already at a big advantage. They already have 46 Senate seats, and they only need to get to 50 to have the advantage because they have J.D. Vance as the tiebreaker. But the Democrats also have their own safe states, which include Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Illinois, Delaware, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. And if you look at the map right now, they have a pretty huge advantage, which they do. It's going to be very unlikely for the Democrats to win the Senate in 2026. And that is because the Senate gives the advantage to Republicans a little bit, because Republicans do better in smaller states and the Senate represents states equally. And so now we're going to talk about some of the maybe closer states, but still pretty locked in. So we're going to start with Alaska. And Alaska has a pretty popular Republican incumbent, Dan Sullivan, who is seeking re-election. And in the general election, most people have it Republican. One person has it tilt Republican, and that's because Mary Peltola may run, and she's a very popular Democrat from Alaska. But still, there's a lot of Republican base in the state, and this one poll does have Mary Peltola winning, but that's with 15% undecided voters. And with all the Republicans in Alaska, it's definitely going to vote Republican, so that's going to be a Republican state. And then in Nebraska, we have the incumbent Republican senator running, and he is endorsed by Donald Trump, of course. But there is an independent running who ran in 2024 and got a decent share of the vote. He was only lost by 7 points. So he could do a little bit of damage, get a little closer than 2024. But it's still pretty likely that Republicans win. You see this poll has Dan Osborne only down by 1 percentage point. So it could be closer than we think, but I think it will be a likely Republican state. And now we're going to move on to Iowa. And Iowa, there's an incumbent senator who's running again, but she has said some things in town halls that are unpopular. So she's probably going to lose a little bit of support from her last election cycle. And there's not really a big name Democrat who has entered the race yet, but it's still pretty Republican. It's been Republican for Iowa since Obama won it. It's just been Republican. And the poll that is out has Republican incumbent winning. So I'm going to put that as a likely Republican state. Now we are going to go to Ohio. And in Ohio, you have a Republican senator who is running, who was appointed in J.D. Vance's position when J.D. Vance became vice president. And the only real challenger I could see would be Sherrod Brown, who is a popular Democratic, well-known senator who lost in 2024, but could run in 2026. And you have race to the White House that gives this a toss-up, which is kind of crazy because this Ohio is very Republican and it's gotten redder every year. So I think that's going to continue, and I think Ohio is a likely Republican state. And now we are going to go to Texas. And Texas is interesting because the incumbent senator, Republican, is going to be challenged in the primary by Ken Paxton. And it's looking that Ken Paxton is going to win the nomination and beat the incumbent senator. And this could be bad for Republicans because both of their people running for the nomination are not very popular. And you have someone like Colin Allred, who could do very well in Texas. He ran in 2024, and he has the ability to flip the seat. But he hasn't officially announced if he's running yet. But if he does, it could make some big waves throughout Texas. And Texas has always been a Republican state. But you see this one poll has Colin Allred winning, but I think it is still a likely Republican state. So now we are going to go to Virginia. And Virginia, we have the incumbent senator most likely running again. But where we could see it get a little shaky is if the governor, Glenn Youngkin, jumps into the race, who is a popular Republican governor in a blue state. And all the predictions have this as a solid Democratic state, but there's that chance that Glenn Youngkin could jump in and make some waves. So I'm giving this likely Democratic. So now we are going to talk about Minnesota. Minnesota, the Democratic incumbent is retiring, so it is an open seat for the Democrats. And it looks that they're going to have a competitive primary, and it looks like Peggy Flanagan is going to win the primary. And there's not really any big-name Republican challengers, but just because the Democrats are having a competitive primary means they may not be all supported on one candidate, but this is still going to be a Democratic state. It's just going to be a little closer, so it's going to be lean Democratic. And now we are going to go to New Hampshire, which is an open seat because the Democrat retired. And we have Chris Papaz, who is most likely going to get the Democratic nomination. But where it gets interesting is if someone like Chris Sununu, who is the current governor, runs to challenge for the seat. And that could make it a very close seat. You see some of the polls, you have Chris Sununu winning. And if Chris Sununu runs, it will be a very close seat. But if he doesn't, it will be a solid Democrat seat. So I'm going to give New Hampshire a lean Democratic seat. Now we are going to talk about Michigan. Michigan, the incumbent Gary Peters is retiring, and it looks like there's going to be a competitive primary for the Democratic nomination. And most likely, Mike Rogers, who lost to Alyssa Slotkin in 2024, is going to be the Republican nominee for the Senate seat. And all these predictions and polls have it being a very close race. But Democrats have always done well in Michigan in the midterms. In 2022, Gretchen Whitmer won the governorship by 11 points. And I think Michigan just has this weird midterm turnout for Democrats, and I think that's going to carry Democrats to victory here, so I'm going to give that a lean Democratic. And now we're going to go to Maine, which is very interesting. You have Susan Collins, the incumbent, who is running again, but she has some very low approval ratings. Some polls show her as low as 20% approval, and Democrats have always been trying to unseat Susan Collins because this is a Democratic state with a Republican senator. But they've never been able to do it. But this is their one chance, I think, their best chance to do it. But the problem is Democrats have not gotten organized. They haven't gotten around one candidate. No big name candidates have jumped into this race. And so I think Democrats have a missed opportunity here in Maine. And that's why I think Susan Collins is going to win, and she has won in the past, and I think that momentum's just going to carry, and I'm going to put this as a lean Republican state. Now we're going to go to Georgia, which you have an incumbent Democratic Senator, Jon Ossoff, who is relatively popular, and there's not really a big challenger that has come into the race to challenge him for the seat. But Georgia has always been super competitive, and a lot of prediction models have this as a very close state, toss-up battleground. And you see in these polls, it has Jon Ossoff winning by a couple percentage points. And I think that's true. Jon Ossoff is going to win and help the Democrats here, but I think it's going to be very close. So I'm going to put this as a tilt margin for the Democrats in Georgia. And we have our last state, North Carolina, which is very interesting because Thom Tillis, the Republican incumbent, has withdrawn from the election and he will not be running. He has come out against Trump in many ways, and Trump has flamed him for that and told him he's going to have a primary challenger. And so he just withdrew from the race. And so that is a big opportunity for Democrats, especially if a very popular governor, Roy Cooper, jumps in the race. And I think he has a great chance to win this race if he runs. And you have Race to the White House rating this as a tilt Democratic, which is a flip. And you see all these polls, you have Roy Cooper up ahead. So that's why I think Democrats are going to flip this seat by a very close margin. It's going to be a tilt margin. So that leaves Republicans with 52 seats and Democrats with 48. Democrats flipped one seat, North Carolina. And see, Democrats, looking at this map, you would say, oh, Democrats flipped a lot of seats that Trump won in 2024. Yes, they did, but that's still not enough to reclaim the Senate. It's very hard for Democrats to win the Senate. And even if Democrats would, the only state I see them winning is Maine, and that would only bring them to 49. So Democrats really don't have any chance of winning the Senate in 2026. And that can be important because the Senate confirms nominations, judges, any presidential appointments, which Trump will probably do during his last 2 years in office. He will probably appoint another Supreme Court judge because some may retire. So I think winning the Senate is very important, and it looks like Republicans are definitely on track to do that. So thanks for watching today, guys. Please subscribe and like the video and comment if you have any thoughts. I would love to hear them. And have a great rest of your Monday.